Hello everyone. So today we are going to start one paper 2016 paper third of economy. As we are going to start today this paper discussion, so we can see here first of all we are going to discuss syllabus. So what is the syllabus of paper third? Paper third syllabus is Indian economy and issue relating to the planning, mobilization of resources, growth and development, inclusive growth and issue arising from it, government budgeting, major crop and cropping pattern in various country and different irrigation and irrigation system, transport marketing of agriculture produce and issues related to e-technology, issue related to direct indirect farm subsidies and minimum support price, public distribution system functioning limitation, pds system, and animal rearing and food security, buffer stock, issue related to food processing and related industry, and significance location upstream and downstream, supply chain management, land reform in India, effect of liberalization on the economy, change in industrial policy and industrial growth, infrastructure, energy, port, road transport and railway, investment model, science and technology, achievement of Indians in science and technology, awareness in IT, space, computer, robotics, nanotechnology, biotechnology, and issue relating to intellectual property right, conservation, environment, pollution, degradation, and environment impact assessment, disaster management, linkage between development of spirit of extremism, role of external state and non-state actors, internal security and internal security through communication network, role of media, social networking sites, internal security challenges, basic of cyber security, money laundering prevention, security challenges of management in border areas like linkages of organized crime with terrorism, various security forces and agency and their mandate. All right, so now we are going to discuss the paper third. This is paper fourth. Okay, so here is also maximum marks is 250. There is 12 and half, that is old paper, that's why. Otherwise the mark system is now it's all around 10 marks and 20 marks. Okay, 10 into 10 and 15 into 150, I think. So that is the different pattern now. So first of all we are going to discuss here paper. All right, so instructions like one, how globalization has led to the reduction of employment in the formal sector of the Indian economy, is increased informalization detrimental to the development of the country. So what this question wants to ask, globalization, reduction of employment in the formal sector, in the formal sector. Okay, reduction of employment in the formal sector and information determined to development of the country, to the development of the country. Regarding that information, the question wants to ask about the globalization and employment reduction in the formal sector of Indian economy and formal sector of Indian economy and related issues. Okay, so formal sector of employment in India has mainly been the industrial and governmental sector. Two sector are informal, industrial sector and government sector. So globalization opened Indian economy to foreign companies who bought technology and investment in India. With latest technology and heavy investment, production pattern shifted from manual to mechanical. Okay, now because of the globalization, technology and investment production pattern shifted to the manual to mechanical. What happened? Manual to mechanical. Labor intensive industry has shifted towards capital and technology intensive pattern. Before that there was a labor intensive economy, but now there is capital and technology intensive economy. This requires skill which is lacking in Indian labor. So what was lacking? There was no skill, but in India skill development in labor force has been seriously neglected due to various reasons. So what globalization impacted? There is skill development now. There's Indian labor system has been changed now. Globalization also encouraged government and private company to outsource their work to contracting firms, which reduce their operative cost and increased efficiency. What globalization has changed the positive impact? It increased the efficiency. It also firmly like reduced the operative cost. Operation cost has been reduced and outsourcing has been there. Okay, and to match the competition of the country, now the competition has been increased and had to adapt to the new trend of economic development. Also the economic development, there is new trend because manual to mechanical. Okay, operative cost has been reduced now, increase the efficiency, now competition has been increased, skill has been increased. So demand of open economy have vanished. Okay, so before that there was closed economy, but now it's a open economy. So before that there was not compete with the open economy, but now after globalization they are able to compete with the uh, open economy. Given the trend of major informalized economy, government cannot plan its policy efficiently and sometimes lose revenue generation. In India, tax to GDP ratio remained low. So tax to GDP ratio was also low due to the very small formal sector was very small, and many industry have shifted to service sector which are not regulated and do not come under tax net. Small industry have stopped production and turned to cheap import. Resultantly, government program of social security and other benefit which are available to formal sector are not implemented. This becomes detrimental to the development of the country. What it want to say? It want to say like after globalization, now economy is more formalized. Before that was the informal economy. Okay, now government cannot plan its policies effectively and sometimes lose revenue generation. When there was an informal economy, there was lots of problems. India's tax to GDP ratio also was low, and very small formal sector economic activity was there. Many industry has shifted to service sector which was not regulated and do not come under tax net. Okay, many service sector economy was also not in the tax net. So small industry have stopped production and turned to cheap import. Okay, so resultantly government program of social security and other benefit which are available to formal sector are not implemented widely. This become detrimental to the development of the country. So that's why how globalization has led to a reduction of employment in the formal sector of the Indian economy is increased informalization detrimental to the development of the country. So this question is totally different. Actually, this question should be asked like how globalization had led to the reduction of employment. This is asking about how globalization led to the reduction of employment in the formal sector of the Indian economy. That's why we are giving here the some points. Like it's a question is kind of negative sense we are going to think about, because increase informalization detrimental to the development of the country. Yes, if there is a informalization, then definitely the development of the country will be increased. But what is globalization? Globalization is the particular situation when Indian economy will directly connect with the formal economy, with the international economies. So that will definitely lead to improve the employment, improve the formal sector employment. But here what it is one wants to ask, it's saying just opposite, led to the reduction of employment in the formal sector of economy. So there is just some different kind of fundamentals we should has to describe here, that given the trend of more for informalized economy, government cannot plan its policy effectively because it is now more informal. That's why government is not able to plan its policies. Why? Because of privatization. Privatization is what? Now government regulations is less, that's why tax to GDP ratio is less. Even they are not come ambit of the tax ambit, even they are not come in the ambit of the governmental tax. Many service sectors, even there is lacking in the skills, even they are lacking in the competition. So these kind of factors which are impacted over the formal sector economy because of the globalization, we should has to describe in this question. Okay, question number 2, women empowerment in India needs gender budgeting. What are the requirement and status of gender budgeting in Indian context? So we are going to discuss the question number 2, that is related to the gender budgeting. Okay, so yeah, commitment is a powerful tool for achieving gender mainstreaming so as to ensure that benefit of development reach women as much as men. So what we want in gender budgeting, that benefit should be reached at the women as such as men are getting the benefits. Women from 48% of our population, but their presence in mainstream economy is very less. Okay, in man dominated society, gender budgeting ensure that allocation of women are met properly. This will help in empowerment of women and help them contribute to the economy in more effective manner. Gender budgeting in India follow the following measures. What are the measures? Specifically targeted expenditure to women and girls, pre-women allocations and composite expenditure schemes with a significant women component. Like there are lots of schemes of government now, women component are going to increase. Residual public expenditure that have gender differential impact, like what are the public expenditure, what are the gender differentiated impact. So Indian government introduced gender budgeting in 2005 and 6 as a budgetary practice and institutionalized it by introduction of gender budget statement. Okay, since 2005 to 6, that was come in the plan. The statement captured the total quantum of resources earmarked for women in a financial year, budgetary resources allocation, and the specific expenditure amount for women specific program are separately mentioned as part of the gender budgeting. So in 2016 and 17 budget, 100% women specific program was they were there, and women specific program for part B total allocation was 73212 crore rupees. That was a budget in 2016 and 17. Now question number 3, what is that? Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana is necessary for bringing unbanked to the institutional finance fold. Do you agree with this for financial inclusion of the poor section of the Indian society? Give argument to justify your opinion. What the question wants to ask is asking what Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana is necessary for bringing unbanked to the institutional finance fold. So institutional finance, bringing unbanked to the institutional finance fold. Do you agree with this financial inclusion for the poor section? So what is Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana? Aims at ensuring access to various financial services like availability of basic service bank account, access to need based credit, remittance facilities, and insurance and pension to the excluded section. Who are the excluded section? The people who are weaker sections, low income groups, they are the excluded section. So the national mission on financial inclusion encompasses an integrated approach to bring about comprehensive financial inclusion for households. Okay, the beneficiary would get RuPay debit card in that, and having inbuilt accident insurance cover also for 1 lakh rupees. Okay, so RuPay debit card and 1 lakh rupees insurance cover is also there. And also envisages challenges all government benefits like center, state and local body to the beneficiary's account, and pushing the direct benefit transfer scheme to the union government. Alright, with the proactive approach of opening zero balance account with minimum requirement of documents. Now there is a zero balance account, and no needs to be no needs there to put some kind of documentations. and will be minimum documents, not only completely abolishment of the documents, minimum documents. The scheme will be able to bring larger section of population under banking mechanism. Financial inclusion of poor classes people will allow government to increase their participation in the proper ensuring benefits of government scheme. That is the particular the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, which was came through by the government. All right. Now question number 4. So create direct link between government and pupil. This will create direct link between government and pupil, and also bureaucratic hurdle will be reduced, transparency will be increased, corruption will be reduced, and delay in the delivery mechanism will be reduced. So this will successfully implemented in rural areas, especially compulsion of demonetization schemes. Okay, so rural area, and also especially given the compulsion of demonetization scheme of government. Now we are going to discuss what are the smart cities, examine the relevance for urban development in India, will it increase rural urban differences, give argument for smart village in the light of Pura and urban mission. So there is Pura mission, there is urban mission, and smart city mission. Three missions are given, three key points are given, and one is the what is the smart village. Question number 4. Smart city are not defined in Indian context by the smart city mission of government, but it describes them as city with better amenities as per requirement of dwellers. What are the smart cities? This is the better amenities. Basic facilities are available like water, electricity, school, college, and quality education, hospital, healthcare, transportation facility, bus, train, airport, metro, everything is available there. Okay, and the other amenities are what? Telephone, internet, connectivity, court, e-governance, that all, better sanitation also. So these smart cities are required in India, but actually 68% of Indian population is living in rural areas. That's why they required better facilities. So for smart village, there is one more program which was launched by the government, providing urban amenities to the rural areas, Pura, and newly launched urban mission, which mission are good step in direction of smart village. Okay, so big number of city dwellers are also temporarily migrant for employment and education purpose. If these facilities are created in rural area, there will be no requirement for migration towards the urban area. What are the problem? Migration is the big problem, so we want like migration should not be there. If government does not think in term of improving facility in rural areas, burden will be increased. So space, lack of infrastructure, city are becoming uninhabitable. This also increase gap living standard of people in urban and rural area. So that is the question we discussed. Now next question is question number 5. Justify the need for FDI for the development of Indian economy. Why there is gap between MOU signed and actual FDI? Suggest remedial steps to be taken for increasing actual FDI in India. So question is the basically asking about the FDI. Okay, for development of the Indian economy, why there is gap between MOU sign and actual FDI. So why is gap between MOU sign and actual FDI? What is that gap? Suggest remedial step to be taken for increasing actual FDI in India. So foreign direct investment is required for any economy. Why it's required? Because to meet its requirement like infrastructure, industrialization, economic activities, creating employment, sometimes also to provide social sector infrastructure. That's why we required FDI in our economy. So India as a developing economy does not have enough fund to finance all its requirement of the economy. This make India looking for FDI. Okay, we don't have finance to be like regenerate more finance in our economy. That's why we're looking for the FDI. So FDI will also bring with itself expertise and technological know-how from developed country. Okay, so in India, there has been cases where MOU are signed for intention to invest, but actual realization of FDI is much less than projected in MOU. There are lots of MOU signed, but what we require the actual FDI, which are still we do not found that. That's why. What it asking MOU signed and actual FDI, why there is gap between. So the question is asking about gap between MOU signed and actual FDI. Okay, so there are lots of MOU we signed, but there are still gap between FDI and MOU. So many factors responsible for this, including complex bureaucratic system, delay in decision making, corruption, hurdle in project implementation, environmental issue, local political issue, allotment issue, lack of infrastructure, electricity, lack of energy deficiency, skilled manpower do not we have. So many projects have not taken off due to some of the above mentioned reason. These are the problem why the gap between the MOU and FDI are widened up. So what are the remedial steps to be adopted by the India that's so that can be increase or FDI? So here we are discussing the gap, how we are going to reduce these gaps, and what can government do for that. Okay. Yeah. So question number 5 and question number 8 is this. No, wait a minute. 6. Cancel. Yeah. So India also rank very poor in ease of doing business index. World Bank in also World Bank always get that ease of doing business, where India is not performing as per that. So that is one issue. That is also one issue. Yeah. So that is also one issue, or ease of doing business. India is not good in ease of doing business also. Okay. So this show why project intended to attract FDI are not moving ahead, and actual realization of FDI remains low. To improve inflow of FDI, India needs to improve upon all the problem creating hurdles in business environment, easing out the procedure for FDI, opening up of the economy for foreign investors, reducing complexity of procedure, streamlining policy, and facilitating investor on fast track basis can help in increasing FDI. What India should do? First of all, to create a business environment. Second, to reduce complexity. Third, to reduce the procedural complexity. Fourth, to streamlining the policies and facilitating investors on the fast track basis. Okay, these can be the phenomenal which can be important to reduce the hurdles. Okay, now next question. Comment on challenges for inclusive growth which include careless and useless manpower in the Indian context. Suggest measures to be taken for facing these challenges. So inclusive growth, first of all, what is the inclusive growth? Okay, we should have the understanding about the definition. Then include the careless and useless manpower. Careless and useless manpower in the Indian context. Okay, and suggest measure. What measure can we take? Inclusive growth requires spreading out benefit of economic growth to everyone. of society, including who are not able to be contribute to the growth meaningfully. These classes of unskilled people who have become useless in growth story are also to be taken care of, maintain inclusive growth. So these is also a class of society which is careless towards own progress. Even they are careless about their own growth of the nation. This section also cannot be neglected while distributing benefit of nation's achievement. They are the downtrodden people, they are the inorganized section, they are the informal section of the or of the country. So this require a holistic approach. What we want, there should be a implement policy which cover unskilled and unemployment person by providing them with suitable jobs and creativity. This is also essential to prevent them from entering into antisocial activities like drug abuse, like sexual activities which are uh, not permissible in the article 23 and article 24, child labor, child harassment, which are like child pornography even. So many issues, women related issues are there. Women related issues like prostitution, we can say, like we can say pornography, and many kind of issues which are really very dark side of our society. So we want that kind of things should not be happen in our society. As per survey, only 2% of Indian labor force is certified skilled labor. This compare very purely to 96% of South Korea. Okay, we have only 2% labor force and South Korea is the 96%. So government can plan to impart skill training to the labor force. While making primary education universal, government can start providing technical and vocational training to the poor and weaker section, as well as to make them capable in studying. For financial inclusion, there is Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, skill development skill, digital India program, and lots of governmental schemes are there which can be like Swavlamban Yojana is there. Swavlamban Yojana is there. Mission Indradhanush is there. Okay, so these kind of schemes we can be useful for the inclusive development. Now question number 7: what is the water use efficiency? Describe the role of micro irrigation in increasing the water use efficiency. Water use efficiency refer to the ratio of water used in plant metabolism to water lost by the plant through transpiration. So water use efficiency is what? That is the what is plant metabolism to water lost by plant through transpiration. Plant transpiration and what metabolism, what plant metabolism to water lost by the transpiration. Okay, so increase in water use efficiency is required to area facing soil water deficit and drought problem. We are talking about micro irrigation. So why we required micro irrigation? Because of there is drought problem, there are soil deficit, these are the problem. So water transpiration in the plants are very important to use the water use efficiency. Micro irrigation technique like sprinkler, drip irrigation are very useful increasing water use efficiency rather than canal or open irrigation system. So adapting to micro irrigation will result into better yield and less water use unusefulness. Pipeline network in the field of sprinkle or drop water through nozzle at required. Okay, this can be the things which can be followed by the government. Yeah. So necessary quantity to reduce waste of water through evaporation and consumption by wheat. This water is used by plant efficiency. Okay, so As per the report, drip irrigation 90% water use efficiency in comparison to less than 40% resulting from surface method of irrigation. Reduction in amount of water also reduced consumption of electricity that is used to supply water. So if there is electricity generation, that will also be the problem for water reduction in the water. If there is a irrigation, drip irrigation will increase the 90% efficiency of water. So country like Israel have made excellent use of micro irrigation techniques. We can give the example of Israel. More crop per drop scheme, Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, हर खेत को पानी, एंड मोर ड्रॉप पर क्रॉप, हर खेत को पानी, प्रधानमंत्री कृषि सिंचाई योजना, माइक्रो इरिगेशन टेक्निक्स, सन हाई सनलाइट विद द माइक्रो इरिगेशन using the water efficiency. Okay, now next question, what is the allelopathy? Discuss the role in major cropping system of irrigated agriculture. Allelopathy is a biological phenomenon referring to capability of an organism to produce one or more biochemical to influence the germination, growth, survival and reproduction of other organisms. What is the allelopathy? Allelopathy is a biological phenomena, okay, referring to capability of an organism to produce one or more biochemical to influence the germination. So what is the allelopathy? This is a biological phenomena to influence the germination, growth, survival of microorganism. Okay. So these biochemical are known as allelochemical and have beneficial or detrimental effect on target organism. This question is very specific with the science background peoples, and this asked in irrigation agriculture. So we can give over sense of humor should be used here, or like consciousness of mind should be there, that these kinds of question are with the biochemical and these are used these can be used in the irrigation pattern. Allelopathy is a chemical mechanism that provide plant with an advantage for competing for limited resources. This ability of the plant to suppress weed. So what we want, weed reduction determined by crop allelopathy and competitiveness. Allelopathic applications such as straw mulching provide sustainable weed management, further reducing negative impact. Like it will improve the mulching. Straw mulching provides sustainable weed management and will reduce the negative impact on the agriculture. To ensure sustainable agriculture development, it is important to exploit cultivation systems that take advantage of simultaneously inhibitory influence of allelopathic plants to regulate plant growth and development and to avoid allelopathy ototoxicity. There is the allelopathy ototoxicity is there, so we want to reduce the toxicity. So we are going to ensure the sustainable agricultural development and to import and exploit cultivation system. We want to improve the cultivation system also. What will we do? We will regulate the plant growth and also development of that plant, and will reduce the allelopathic toxicity will be reduced. Okay, so allelopathy is known for agriculture and also recognized and used in modern agricultural activities. So allelopathic play an important role in investigation of appropriate farming system as well as control of weed, disease and insect. It will control the weed, disease and insect and the elevation of continuous cropping obstacle. Okay, so allochemical can act as an environment friendly herbicide, fungicide and insecticide and plant growth regulator, can have great value in sustainable agriculture. With increasing emphasis on organic agriculture and environmental protection, increasing attention has been paid to allelopathic research. So what will now we want? We want the agriculture protection as well as environmental protection. That's why the allelopathic research is important for the plant growth. Okay, next question. Discuss the role of land reform in agriculture development. Identify the factors that were responsible for the success of land reform in India. Okay, so land reform in India started immediately after independence. Okay, with dual objective. One objective was the effective utilization of land, and second was social justice. Effective utilization of land and social justice. The system of jamidari and feudal system has left farmers landless. So farmers were landless because of there was jamidari system, there was a feudal system. To end tyranny of farmer, land reform were advocated by many activities, including Acharya Vinoba Bhave through Bhudan movement. Okay, so it's very important movement. Acharya Vinoba Bhave and many scholars were related to the Bhudan movement, and that was really very important movement in the Indian history. So that was the movement regarding to study about the land reform movement in the India at that period of time. Okay, so the most notable and successful example of land reform are in the state of West Bengal and Kerala. After promising of land reform and elected to power in West Bengal in 1977, the Communist Party of India, Marxist, kept their word and invited gradual land reform. Who invited the gradual land reform? That was the Communist Party of India in the West Bengal. Okay, so gradual land reform such as Operation Barga. Operation Barga was at the time of the West Bengal in 1977 with the Communist Party of India. So this result was as a more equitable distribution of the land among landless farmer and enumeration of landless farmer in the land reform in Kerala also. So state administration have actually carried out the most extensive land tenancy and agrarian labor wage reform in non-socialist led industrialized world. Another successful land reform program was launched in Jammu Kashmir in 1947. Okay, so land reform involved redistribution of land ownership rights, resizing of agricultural land. What are the land reform? To the redistribution of the land, to the resizing of the land, to the reforms in the wage system and possessory rights, reform in the tenancy rights, and also arable land. These was the land reform movement. Main reason for the success of land reform were political will and desire of farmer to have ownership of land. The main reason was political, but still there was a desire of farmer to have ownership of the land. Okay, so independence had created a high mood in political spirit to implement land reform in favor of poor farmer. What do you want? We want that there should be an independent to the poor farmer. That's why land reform was implemented in that particular area. An actual and effective implementation happened much later and only in some areas. Okay, now next question. And what is the next question? Given the vulnerability of the Indian agriculture to vagaries of nature, discuss the need for crop insurance and bring out the salient feature of the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. This question is directly put out from the scheme Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. So we will first of all we do have understanding about the what are the salient feature of the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Then what is the crop insurance and bring out salient feature like why crop insurance is important and what are the vulnerability in the Indian agriculture system to vagaries of nature. Okay, so in India, crop failure due to lack or excess rainfall. Why there is a crop failure? Because our Indian monsoon system is dependent over the rainfall. So there are lack of rainfall. Sometimes there are excess rainfall or other natural reason is very common and recurring problem in such condition. Okay, farmer require protection of insurance for their crop. Why? Because there is not we are not committed towards the nature that we will going to grow the agriculture, so nature will committed to us that she will also take care of us. Okay, that's why there is a Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana that was launched with objective providing insurance coverage and financial support to the farmer. What is there? Insurance and financial support to the farmer in case of failure of the notified crop as a result of natural calamities. What are the natural calamities? Like flood, drought, or pest or disease, any kind of. Okay, it also aims to stabilize the income of farmer to ensure their continuance in farmer. Okay, for what we required like farmer should have the income, farmer should have the stabilized income. So Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana will encourage farmer to adopt innovative and modern agriculture practice. It will ensure flow of credit to the agriculture sector. Okay, and what is happening like yield loss, standing crop on notified area basis, comprehensive risk insurance is provided to cover yield loss. What is the yield loss? If there is a yield loss, like there is a loss in agriculture, the yield loss. Okay, standing crop on notified area basis. So there is some standing crop that in the notified area basis, if that is losing, that means there is a yield loss. So if there is a yield loss, then comprehensive risk insurance is also providing to cover the yield loss due to non preventable risk. What are the non preventable risk? That is the natural fire, lightning storm, hailstorm, cyclone, typhoon, tempest, hurricane, tornado, risk due to flood, inundation and landslide, drought, dry spell, pest, disease also will be covered. So everything has been covered in yield loss. Like standing crop on notified area is not according to basis of the time period, according to the time management, that's not working. That's why now in case where majority of insured farmer of notified area having intent to sow, plant and incurred expenditure for purpose are prevented from sowing, planting the insured crop due to adverse weather condition. What are the problem? Like there are the notified area where farmer is going to sow their agriculture produce, but still there is problem like incur expenditure for the purpose. What, how he will incur the expenditure, and how will he will prevent the sowing, planting and the adverse weather conditions. So for that, like what is the indemnity claim up to the maximum 25% of sum insured, like that is the indemnity. So so post harvest losses are also available up to maximum period 14 days. And condition to dry in the field, sorry, okay, for certain localized area was also identified, the risk was affected by the crop loss and all that. So that was the particular, the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, and what are the vulnerability, and to discuss the need for the crop insurance and salient feature of the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. All right, hope you enjoyed this lecture.